The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the transmission began. Ambassador Elena's face appeared on the massive holographic display, her features tired and marked by years of struggle. Behind her, through the window of the orbital station, Earth hung like a dying ember against the black of space. "This is Ambassador Elena Mitchell of the United Earth Government," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I am transmitting what will be our final official communication to the Galactic Council." In the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species watched with varying degrees of interest. The tall, blue-skinned Nexari shifted in, their floating chairs, their three eyes blinking in sequence. The ancient Vorthak, their scaled forms hunched over crystal control panels, made soft clicking sounds of disapproval. Even the usually kind Eldorians with their soft fur and large compassionate eyes seemed uncomfortable. As of today, Elena continued, Earth's atmospheric systems have reached critical failure. Our oceans are boiling away. The magnetic field is collapsing. In less than 72 hours, our homeworld will no longer be able to support life. A low murmur swept through the chamber. Council Speaker Vextal, a towering Nexari with golden skin markings that showed his high rank, raised one of his four arms for silence. Elena's image flickered as her transmission struggled against the electromagnetic storms now raging around Earth. "We formally request refugee status for all remaining human colonies and settlements. Our total population across all worlds is approximately 2.7 million individuals." The Nexari delegation began whispering among themselves. One of them, Councillor Nexara, leaned forward. "How pathetic," she said in her musical voice. "They clung to that dying rock until the very end. Such primitive attachment to a single world." "Indeed," rumbled Elder Vorthak Kulmesh, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years. "In our long history, we have seen many species rise and fall. Those who cannot adapt to the greater galaxy are doomed to extinction. It is the natural order." On the far side of the chamber, Eldorian Representative Timko shook his furry head sadly. "Perhaps we should have done more to help them earlier. They seemed so young as a species." "Help them with what?" Nexara's laugh was like silver bells. "They destroyed their own world through poor management. What could we have taught beings who cannot even maintain their own atmosphere?" The transmission continued. Elena's voice grew stronger, more determined. "We do not ask for charity. Human colonies have already proven their worth as workers, researchers, and contributors to galactic society. We have much to offer." "Such as?" Councillor Vextal asked, though his tone suggested he expected no meaningful answer. "Our adaptability," Elena replied, as if she could hear him. "Our willingness to work in conditions others find impossible. Our different perspective on problems that have challenged the galaxy for generations." More whispers, this time tinged with amusement. The Zenthari delegation, insectoid beings with compound eyes, buzzed with what passed for laughter among their kind. "Different perspective," one of them clicked. "Yes, the perspective of failure." Dr. Marcus Chen watched the transmission from Luna Station, one of the last functioning human outposts. The small research facility orbited Earth's moon, its handful of scientists and technicians bearing witness to their homeworld's final hours. "They don't understand," whispered Dr. Amy Walsh, Marcus's assistant. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "They think we're just another failed species." Marcus nodded, his weathered face grim. Around him, displays showed Earth's deteriorating condition. The atmosphere was bleeding away into space. Massive storms covered entire continents. The poles had melted completely, and the remaining land masses were disappearing under boiling seas. "Maybe that's for the best," he said quietly. "Let them underestimate us." On the main screen, Elena was concluding her message. "We understand that our request may be viewed unfavorably. We know that Earth's fall will be seen as evidence of our species' weakness, but I want the Council to remember this moment. Remember that we asked for help, and consider carefully what answer you give." Her image stabilized for a moment, and her eyes seemed to look directly into the camera, Because the human species is not ending today. We are beginning something new. The transmission cut out. In the Great Hall, silence stretched for several seconds before the discussions began. Dramatic words from a dying species, Vextall observed. Very human, this tendency toward empty theatrics. Elder Kulmesh's massive form shifted in his chair. I propose we offer limited refugee status. Basic survival assistance only. They may serve as cautionary example to other young species about the importance of proper planetary stewardship. Agreed, said several voices at once. Aldorian Timko raised a gentle objection. Perhaps we could offer more substantial aid. Their scientists have made some interesting discoveries. Nothing that our own researchers could not achieve given time, Nexara replied dismissively. No, basic refugee status is generous enough. They should be grateful for even that much consideration. The vote was swift and unanimous. Humanity would receive minimal assistance, enough to survive, but nothing more. They would be classified as a failed sapient species, a designation that carried significant legal and social implications throughout the galaxy. Back on Luna Station, Marcus made his decision. His fingers moved across the control panel, entering codes that he had hoped never to use. Around him, his small team watched in growing alarm. Marcus, what are you doing? Amy asked. Activating the Genesis protocol, he replied without looking up. The blood drained from her face. That project was abandoned for good reason. The calculations showed it could destabilize entire solar systems. The calculations assumed normal parameters, Marcus said. But Earth is already dying. We have nothing left to lose. Dr. James Park, the station's chief engineer, stepped forward. The energy requirements alone would drain every power cell we have. And even if it works, the process could take centuries. Then we better hope humanity survives long enough to see the results, Marcus replied. The Genesis protocol had been developed in secret during Earth's final decades. It was designed to accelerate planetary recovery using controlled quantum manipulation of geological and atmospheric processes. The theory was sound, but the risks were enormous. A single miscalculation could shatter a world instead of healing it. As Marcus's fingers danced over the controls, Earth continued its death spiral below them. Massive chunks of the planet's crust were breaking away, drawn into space by the collapsing magnetic field. The sight was both terrible and beautiful, like watching a star die in slow motion. Protocol activated, Marcus announced. Signal sent to all deep space probes. The process will begin in 6 hours. Amy stared at him. You're gambling with the entire solar system. I'm gambling that humans are more than the galaxy thinks we are, he corrected. Elena was right. This isn't our end. It's our beginning. In the depths of space, automated probes that had been drifting for decades suddenly came to life. They had been sent out years ago as part of a terraforming research project, carrying experimental equipment that most humans had forgotten about. Now they began moving toward Earth, their quantum processors calculating trajectories and energy patterns that would either save their homeworld or destroy it completely. The Galactic Council meeting continued for several more hours, but the discussion had moved on to other matters. Humanity's request had been processed and filed away. They were now officially classified as refugees, a minor species of little importance, survivors of their own mistakes. None of the alien representatives bothered to monitor Earth's final hours. They assumed they knew how the story would end. A world would die, a species would scatter to the stars as broken survivors, and eventually, they would fade into obscurity like so many others before them. They could not have been more wrong. Earth's sun set on what everyone believed would be the planet's final day. Something unprecedented began to happen. Deep beneath the dying world's surface, quantum fields started to pulse with impossible energies. The Genesis protocol was beginning its work, rewriting the fundamental laws that governed planetary death and rebirth. But that was a secret only. A handful of humans knew. To the galaxy, Earth was simply another failure, a cautionary tale about species that could not manage their own worlds. Soon, they would learn that humans had a very different relationship with failure than anyone expected. 20 years had passed since Earth's final transmission. The galaxy had moved on, as it always did. New trade routes opened, old conflicts settled into routine, and the various species continued their endless dance of politics and commerce. Humanity had become little more than a footnote in galactic history, but humans were still there, scattered across dozens of worlds like seeds on the stellar wind. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he emerged from the deep tunnels. The air recyclers in this section were failing again, and the Xanthari overseers didn't care enough to fix them properly. After all, humans could work in conditions that would kill most other species. Another cave-in on level 7, reported Lisa Chen, her mining suit covered in red dust. Third one this month. Jake nodded grimly. The Xanthari pushed them harder each quarter, demanding more ore from increasingly dangerous sections of the mine. They paid humans half what they paid other workers, claiming it was appropriate compensation for an unestablished species. Any injuries, Jake asked? Tom got his arm crushed, but he'll live. The medic says he'll be back to work in a week. A week. Jake remembered when a crushed arm would have meant months of recovery back on Earth. But humans had adapted. They healed faster now, worked longer, survived conditions that sent other species running for safety. The Xanthari mine supervisor, a large insect-like creature named Ziktar, approached with his usual clicking gait. Morrison human, he buzzed. Production numbers are down 2% this cycle. Explain. The tunnels are unstable, Jake replied calmly. We need better support structures or we'll lose entire sections. Ziktar's compound eyes glittered with annoyance. Humans are supposed to be adaptable. That is why we employ your kind. If you cannot perform your duties, perhaps we should find workers from another species. Jake met the alien's gaze steadily. Good luck finding anyone else willing to work at these depths. The radiation alone would cook most species in an hour. The Xanthari made an angry buzzing sound but said nothing more. It was true, and they both knew it. Humans had become the galaxy's go-to workers for impossible jobs. They went places others couldn't, survived conditions that would be fatal to most species and asked for little in return. But Jake saw something in his fellow humans that their alien employers missed. They weren't just surviving, they were learning. Every technique, every technology, every piece of knowledge they encountered was being absorbed and shared through their growing network. Meanwhile, on the trade hub of Newcaster, Dr. Anna Rodriguez sat in her small office surrounded by data tablets and holographic displays. For 20 years, she had been documenting alien languages, cultures, and technologies. What had started as simple academic curiosity had become something much more significant. Computer, display comparative analysis of Nexari and Vorthak engineering. Principles, she said. The hologram shifted to show complex diagrams and equations. Anna studied them carefully, making notes on her tablet. After 2 decades of observation, she had noticed something that the aliens themselves seemed blind to. Patterns in their thinking that created weaknesses. The Nexari, for all their technological advancement, were trapped by their rigid hierarchical mindset. They approached every problem from the top down, which made them incredibly efficient but also predictable. The Vorthak, with their ancient wisdom, were so bound by tradition that they couldn't adapt to truly new situations. Each species had similar blind spots, born from the very strengths that had made them successful. But humans, scattered and desperate, had learned to see past those limitations. Anna's door chimed. She looked up to see Captain Roy Williams enter, still wearing his ship captain's uniform despite being officially grounded for the past 6 months. Any luck with the settlement applications? She asked. Roy shook his head bitterly. Denied again. The Aldorians say we need proper planetary management credentials before they'll consider letting us establish a permanent colony. The Nexari want us to pay fees we can't afford. And the Vorthak? He paused, running a hand through his graying hair. The Vorthak just laughed. We're nomads to them, Anna said softly. Reminders of what happens when a species fails to properly manage their homeworld. Maybe that's what we are, Roy replied, sinking into a chair. I've been leading refugee fleets for 20 years, Anna, moving from system to system, begging for scraps. Sometimes I wonder if they're right about us. Anna turned to face him fully. Roy, look at this data. Really look at it. She gestured to her displays. We're not the same species that left Earth. We're adapting faster than any species in recorded galactic history. She pulled up another set of data. Jake's mining crews on Kepler 442b are extracting ore from depths that were considered impossible 15 years ago. The human settlements on Titan 7 are thriving in atmospheric conditions that require full environmental suits for other species. And your own fleet has survived in deep space longer than any previous refugee group. Roy studied the information with growing interest. I hadn't thought about it that way. Because we're too close to see it, Anna continued. But I've been watching, documenting, analyzing. We're not just surviving, Roy, we're evolving. Her communication system chimed with an incoming message. Anna activated it, and the face of Dr. Ben Parker appeared on the screen. He looked older than his 50 years, but his eyes were bright with excitement. Anna, Roy, you need to see this, he said without preamble. I'm transmitting the latest data from the atmospheric processors on Colony 7. Anna's screen filled with technical readouts. What am I looking at, Ben? Efficiency ratings that shouldn't be possible. The humans there have modified the terraforming equipment using techniques from 3 different alien technologies. They've increased output by 40% while reducing power consumption by half. Roy leaned forward. How? They're thinking outside the boxes that trap each individual species, Ben explained. Nexari technology is incredibly precise but inflexible. Vorthak systems are powerful but wasteful. Eldorian designs are efficient but limited in scope. But humans are combining elements from all of them in ways that none of those species would ever consider. Anna felt a thrill of understanding. Because we don't have their cultural limitations. Exactly. We're approaching their technologies with completely fresh perspectives, and because we've been forced to work with all of them as refugees and laborers, we understand their systems better than they realize. The conversation continued for another hour, with more reports coming in from human settlements across the galaxy. A pattern was emerging. Humans weren't just adapting to alien technologies, they were improving them. On the mining world, Jake was having his own revelations. As he worked the deep tunnels, he had begun to notice flaws in the Zinthari mining equipment. The aliens used brute force approaches that worked but wasted enormous amounts of energy and materials. During his break, he sketched modifications in his personal journal, simple changes that could increase efficiency by significant margins. He shared these ideas with other human workers, who added their own insights and improvements. We should tell the supervisors, suggested Lisa. Jake shook his head. Not yet. Let's perfect these modifications first. When we're ready, we'll show them what humans can really do. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. Human communities were connecting through encrypted communications, sharing discoveries and innovations. What the galaxy saw as scattered refugees were actually becoming something unprecedented. A distributed civilization with knowledge and perspectives drawn from every major species in known space. The Galactic Council's classification of humans as a failed sapient species had become a kind of protection. Nobody paid much attention to failed species. They were allowed to move freely as laborers and refugees, which gave them access to technologies and information that would normally be restricted. But the galaxy was starting to notice small changes. Problems that had stumped alien scientists for years were being solved by human workers. Efficiency improvements were appearing in systems where humans had been employed. Trade routes were becoming more profitable in sectors with significant human populations. Most alien administrators dismissed these improvements as lucky accidents or statistical anomalies. After all, what could a failed species possibly teach them? Captain Roy began to understand what Anna had been trying to tell him. As he looked at the latest reports from human settlements, he saw the truth. They weren't refugees anymore. They weren't even the same species that had fled Earth's destruction. They were becoming something new, something that the galaxy had never Seen before? The question was, how long before the rest of the galaxy realized it too? 50 years had passed since Earth's fall, and the galaxy was beginning to notice something strange. On the industrial world of Titan 7, Chief Engineer Lisa Park stood in the middle of what should have been a disaster zone. The atmospheric processors had failed 3 days ago, leaving the colony exposed to air that would kill most species within minutes. The Nexari administrators had evacuated immediately, expecting to return to find only corpses. Instead, they found humans working calmly in the toxic atmosphere, repairing equipment with their bare hands. "This is impossible," muttered Supervisor Nexaquan as he watched through the safety of his environmental suit. "The air contains sulfur compounds that should burn their lungs. The radiation levels are triple the safe limit for most species." Lisa looked up from the processor she was fixing and smiled. "It's uncomfortable, but we can handle it for a few hours. My daughter was born here. She can work in this atmosphere all day without problems." The Nexari supervisor stared at her, in disbelief. Lisa's daughter, Emma, was only 20 years old but showed no signs of distress as she welded components in air that would be deadly to most galactic species. Her skin had a slight gray tint, an adaptation that helped filter radiation, and her lung capacity was nearly double that of Earth-born humans. "How?" Nexquan asked. "Evolution doesn't stop just because we left Earth," Lisa replied, not looking up from her work. "Humans adapt. It's what we do." The truth was more complex than Lisa let on. Over 5 decades, human communities had been quietly documenting and encouraging beneficial mutations. Children born on high radiation worlds developed natural resistance. Those raised in low-gravity environments gained enhanced reflexes. Communities in toxic atmospheres evolved improved respiratory systems. What the aliens saw as impossible survival was actually rapid human evolution guided by intelligence and necessity. Dr. Tom Bradley had been studying this phenomenon from his research station on Orbital 9. As the galaxy's leading expert on human biology, a title that meant little since most aliens considered human biology primitive, he had access to data from human settlements across known space. "The genetic changes are accelerating," he told Dr. Grace Kim during their weekly conference call. "Each generation shows more significant adaptations than the last." Grace nodded from her laboratory on the research planet Kepler 186f. "I'm seeing the same thing here, but it's not just physical adaptation, Tom. The cognitive changes are even more remarkable." She pulled up brain scan data on her screen. "Human neural pathways are developing in ways that let us process information from multiple alien cognitive systems simultaneously. We're becoming living bridges between different ways of thinking." This was Tom's great discovery, one that he hadn't yet shared with his alien colleagues. Human brains, shaped by Earth's chaotic and dangerous evolution, were uniquely flexible. Unlike other species that had evolved in stable environments with consistent rules, humans could adapt their thinking patterns to match alien logic systems. "Show me the latest results from the problem-solving tests," Tom said. Grace switched screens. "We gave the same engineering challenges to mixed groups of aliens and humans. When aliens worked alone, they followed their species' traditional approaches, but when humans were added to the groups, the solutions improved dramatically." The data was clear. Human participants weren't just contributing their own ideas. They were helping alien team members think in new ways. They served as cognitive translators, helping Nexari rigid thinking work with Vorthak traditional approaches, or combining Aldorian empathy with Xanthari efficiency. "The aliens don't realize what's happening," Grace continued. "They think we're just lucky. But we're actually becoming something unprecedented, a species that can understand and integrate multiple forms of intelligence." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, human communities were connecting through an increasingly sophisticated network. What had started as simple communication between refugee settlements had evolved into something approaching a distributed civilization. Captain Alex Chen commanded one of the newer human vessels, built using hybrid technologies that no single alien species could have created. His ship, the Rising Phoenix, incorporated Nexari precision engineering, Vorthak power systems, Aldorian efficiency protocols, and Xanthari durability, all integrated through uniquely human problem-solving approaches. Incoming transmission from the scattered network, announced his communications officer, Maya Singh. Alex nodded. The scattered network was what humans called their informal but growing civilization. Unlike traditional galactic societies centered on homeworlds, the network was based on shared knowledge and mutual support across hundreds of scattered communities. "This is Node 7 reporting," came a voice from the speakers. "We've successfully completed the atmospheric conversion on Dead Rock 3. The planet should be habitable within 10 years. Alex smiled. Dead Rock 3 had been written off by every major species as impossible to terraform. But humans had been quietly working on projects that others considered hopeless, using techniques learned from their scattered survival experiences. Confirmed, Node 7. Add Dead Rock 3 to the reclamation list. Any other updates? Node. 12 reports breakthrough in quantum processing using combined Nexari-Vorthak mathematics. Node 15 has successful crop yields using hybrid agricultural techniques. And Node 23? The voice paused. Node 23 has some interesting news about Earth. Alex felt his heart skip. Earth had been dead for 50 years. The Genesis protocol that Dr. Marcus had activated was considered a failure by most humans who even remembered it. What kind of news? Long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy patterns in the Sol system. It might be nothing, but the quantum signatures match theoretical models from the old Genesis research. The bridge fell silent. Earth was more than humanity's dead homeworld. It was their symbol of failure, their reminder of what they had lost. But if the Genesis protocol was actually working, keep monitoring, Alex said finally, and keep it quiet for now. The conversation moved on to other topics, but Alex's mind remained focused on Earth. 50 years was nothing in geological terms, but the Genesis protocol had been designed to work with quantum time acceleration. If it was actually functioning, the results could be visible much sooner than anyone had expected. Back on Titan 7, Lisa Park was dealing with a different kind of revelation. The Nexari supervisors had called in specialists to study how humans could survive in the toxic atmosphere. The results were making them very uncomfortable. "Your species shows adaptation rates that are theoretically impossible," Dr. Nexval told her during the interview. "Most evolutionary changes take thousands of generations. You're showing significant modifications in just 2 or 3 generations." Lisa shrugged. "Humans have always been good at adapting quickly. It's how we survived Earth." "But Earth was stable compared to the conditions you're thriving in now," the scientist protested. "The radiation here is intense. The atmospheric composition is toxic. The gravity is wrong. Yet your children show no signs of stress." "Maybe your definitions of impossible need updating," Lisa suggested mildly. The Nexari scientist made frustrated, clicking sounds. This was the problem with studying humans. They treated impossible things as normal, and normal things as obstacles to overcome. What Dr. Nexval didn't understand was that humans had been sharing adaptation strategies across their network for decades. Beneficial mutations were documented, studied, and encouraged. Medical techniques developed on one world were shared with settlements facing similar challenges. The scattered human communities were functioning as a single, galaxy-spanning evolutionary experiment. Dr. Tom Bradley finally decided to share his findings with the broader scientific community. He submitted his research to the Galactic Journal of Xenobiology, the most prestigious scientific publication in known space. The response was immediate and dismissive. "Rejected," announced the journal's Vorthak editor during their video call. "Your conclusions are clearly biased by your species' limitations. No sapient species can adapt at the rates you claim to document." "The data is solid," Tom protested. "I have 50 years of documentation from over 200 human communities. Anecdotal evidence from a failed species," the editor replied coldly. "Perhaps you should focus your research on more realistic topics." Tom ended the call and stared at his data for a long time. The alien scientific community wasn't ready to accept what humans were becoming. They were trapped by their own assumptions about what was possible. But humans had never cared much about other people's assumptions. Dr. Grace Kim made her own breakthrough a few months later. While studying alien disease patterns, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. A plague was spreading through several alien populations, a mutated virus that attacked neural tissue in ways that seemed designed to exploit the specific biological weaknesses of different species. The disease was particularly deadly because it adapted to each species differently. What killed Nexari through neural overload would destroy Vorthak by shutting down their ancient memory centers. Eldorians died from empathy cascade failures, while Xanthari suffered complete hive mind disconnection. But when Grace tested human blood samples against the virus, she found something remarkable. Human immune. 100 years after Earth's fall, the galaxy was burning. The ancient Vorthak Empire, which had ruled over half the known systems for 10,000 years, was crumbling. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds. Trade routes collapsed under the weight of piracy and war. The careful balance that had kept galactic peace for millennia was falling apart. In the great council chambers on Vorthak Prime, Elder Kulmesh stared at the holographic displays showing defeat after defeat. His scaled hands trembled with age and fury as he watched yet another system declare independence from the Empire. How? He growled at his generals. How are these primitive worlds defeating our fleets? General Vargoth, a younger Vorthak with battle scars covering his massive frame, shifted uncomfortably. They are not fighting like proper civilizations, Elder. They use tactics that make no sense. They strike where we are strongest and run when we expect them to stand and fight. Cowardice, spat another general. No, Vargoth replied slowly. Something else. Something we do not understand. What the Vorthak didn't know was that many of the rebel worlds had human advisors. Over the past century, humans had quietly established themselves as the galaxy's most effective mercenaries and tactical consultants. They didn't fight like any other species because they had learned to fight like survivors. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, now transformed into a major industrial hub, Director Kate Williams reviewed the latest reports from across human space. At 60 years old, she commanded respect throughout the scattered network. The former mining colony had become one of humanity's most important centers of production. The Nexari are requesting military advisors for their border conflicts, reported her aide, David Kim. They're offering standard mercenary rates. Kate smiled. Standard rates were 10 times what humans had been paid as laborers 50 years ago. Accept the contract. Send Team 7. They have experience with Nexari thinking patterns. The truth was humans had become invaluable to every major power in the galaxy. Their ability to understand and adapt to different species' military doctrines made them perfect advisors. More importantly, their experience as scattered survivors had taught them guerrilla tactics that no traditional military could counter. But Kate's real attention was focused on a different report, one that only the highest levels of the scattered network were allowed to see. Any updates from the Sol expedition? She asked quietly. David's expression grew serious. Long-range scouts confirm the energy readings. Earth is definitely showing signs of atmospheric recovery. The quantum storms have stabilized and preliminary scans suggest the beginnings of a new ecosystem. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. The Genesis protocol had been working all along, slowly rebuilding Earth from the quantum level up. After a century of careful reconstruction, their homeworld might actually be coming back to life. How long before it's habitable? Dr. Morgan's team estimates another 50 years for basic atmosphere stability, maybe 25 if the quantum acceleration continues at current rates. The implications were staggering. A reborn Earth would give humanity something no scattered species had ever possessed. A true homeworld with all the political and economic advantages that came with it. But more than that, it would prove that humans could accomplish the impossible. Meanwhile, on the research station Orbital 9, Dr. Ben Shaw was making discoveries that would reshape galactic understanding of warfare and biology. At 90 years old, he was one of the last humans who remembered Earth before its fall. His current research focused on something much more immediate than Earth's recovery: Grace, you need to see this analysis, he transmitted to Dr. Grace Kim, now the galaxy's leading expert on cross-species medicine. Grace's elderly face appeared on his screen. What have you found, Ben? I've been studying the tactical reports from all major conflicts over the past 50 years. There's a pattern that the alien military analysts are missing completely. Ben pulled up a complex tactical display. Look at the Battle of Nexari 7. The rebels should have been crushed. They were outnumbered 5-1, but they won decisively. Here's why. The display highlighted movement patterns and tactical decisions. The Nexari approach warfare hierarchically. Commands flow from top to bottom. Responses follow established protocols. But the rebels, advised by human tacticians, use distributed command structures and improvise constantly. Adaptive chaos versus rigid order, Grace observed. Exactly, and it's happening everywhere. The Xanthari Hive fleet was defeated at Gamma Draconis by tactics that deliberately disrupted their collective decision-making process. The Aldorian. Defense Force lost 3 systems because their empathic combat doctrine was turned against them by advisors who understood their psychological weaknesses. Grace leaned forward, understanding dawning in her eyes. Ben, are you saying that humans have been deliberately studying and exploiting the military weaknesses of every major species? Not deliberately, Ben replied. At least not at first. But 50 years of serving as military advisors has given us complete intelligence on how every species in the galaxy fights. We know their strengths, their weaknesses, their blind spots, and their fears. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Scattered Network's Central Command. Admiral Hayes, one of humanity's most respected military leaders, appeared on their screens with grim news. All network commanders, priority alert. The Vorthak Empire has just declared emergency mobilization. They're activating ancient war protocols that haven't been used in 5,000 years. Ben felt a chill of recognition. The Deep Arsenal protocols? Confirmed. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to deploy world-killer weapons against any system that continues to resist their authority. Grace gasped. World killers were weapons of such devastating power that their very existence was considered a carefully guarded secret. The Vorthak had used them once before during their rise to galactic dominance to destroy entire civilizations that refused to surrender. How many rebel systems are at risk? Ben asked. 37 confirmed targets, Hayes replied, including several with significant human populations. Ben and Grace exchanged glances. This was the moment they had all been preparing for without quite realizing it. The Scattered Network had spent a century learning about alien technologies, alien tactics, and alien weaknesses. Now that knowledge would be put to the ultimate test. Admiral, Ben said slowly, I think it's time to implement the final protocol. Hayes nodded grimly. The final protocol was humanity's ultimate contingency plan, a coordinated revelation of their true capabilities that would either secure their place in the galaxy or mark them for complete extinction. All network nodes are standing by, Hayes confirmed. Are your research findings ready for distribution? More than ready, Grace replied. Ben and I have been preparing this data for decades. Every major species' biological, psychological, and tactical vulnerabilities. Complete analysis of their technologies and how to counter them, and, she paused, the cure for the neural plague that's been spreading through alien populations. Hayes raised an eyebrow. You found a cure? We found something better, Benny said. Human immune systems have developed universal resistance to all known variants of the plague. We can not only cure it, we can prevent it from ever occurring again. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The species that had been dismissed as failed refugees now held the keys to galactic survival. But would the galaxy accept help from humanity? Or would they see human capabilities as a threat to be eliminated? There's more, Hayes continued. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual quantum signatures from the Sol system. Dr. Marcus's old Genesis protocol appears to be reaching completion phase. Ben's hands trembled slightly. Earth is coming back? Preliminary scans suggest a planet that's not just habitable, but transformed. The quantum reconstruction process has created ecosystems that are more stable and diverse than anything in recorded galactic history. Earth isn't just returning. It's returning as something unprecedented. The implications hit all three of them simultaneously. A reborn Earth, combined with humanity's accumulated knowledge and capabilities, would make them a major galactic power overnight. But it would also make them the largest threat that existing powers had ever faced. The Vorthak won't wait for us to become stronger, Grace said quietly. If they realize what we're becoming, they'll try to destroy us completely, Hayes finished, which is why we need to act first. Ben looked at the tactical displays showing Vorthak fleets moving toward their targets. Ancient weapons were being readied for deployment. Entire worlds were about to be sterilized in the name of maintaining galactic order. How long do we have, he asked. 72 hours before the first world killer deployment, Hayes replied. After that, the galaxy will never be the same. Ben made his decision. Send the signal to all network nodes. Activate the final protocol. It's time the galaxy learned what humans really are. As the transmission went out, carried by quantum relays, to human communities across hundreds of worlds, Ben couldn't help but remember Ambassador Elena's final words from a century ago. The human species is not ending today. We are beginning something new. She had been more right than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy was about to discover that the scattered refugees they had ignored for a century had become something unprecedented, a species that understood everyone else better than they understood themselves. The rising storm was about to break, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy held its breath as the first Vorthak world killer weapon powered up above the rebel world of Kepler 438c. The massive ship, built from ancient designs that predated most galactic civilizations, cast a dark shadow across the planet's surface. 3 million inhabitants waited below, Nexari colonists, Aldorian refugees, and 10,000 humans who had made the world their home. Elder Kulmesh himself commanded the flagship Eternal Dominion. At 12,000 years old, he had personally overseen the last deployment of world killer weapons during the Vorthak rise to power. Today would remind the galaxy why his people had ruled for so long. Begin planetary sterilization sequence, he commanded, his ancient voice carrying across the bridge. But as the weapon systems charged, something impossible happened. Every screen on the Vorthak ship went dark for exactly 3 seconds. When they flickered back to life, a new image appeared. The face of Admiral Hayes speaking from the bridge of a human vessel. Elder Kulmesh, Hayes said calmly, I suggest you reconsider your course of action. Kulmesh's scaled features twisted in rage. How dare you interrupt a Vorthak military operation? Your pathetic species has no authority here. Actually, Hayes, replied. We do. Check your tactical displays. Kulmesh turned to his tactical officer, who was staring at his screens in shock. Elder, there are ships everywhere. Hundreds of them. They weren't there 30 seconds ago. The view screen shifted to show the space around Kepler 438c. Vorthak sensors had detected nothing, but now human vessels seemed to materialize from empty space. Ships of designs that no alien species recognized, using stealth technologies that shouldn't exist. Impossible, Kulmesh breathed. No species has cloaking capabilities that advanced. Hayes smiled coldly. No single species does. But humans learned from everyone. Nexari precision engineering, Vorthak power systems, Aldorian efficiency protocols, Zenthari durability, and quantum stealth principles that we developed ourselves. We've spent a century building ships that your sensors can't detect. The truth was even more remarkable. Human engineers had taken the best technologies from every alien species they had encountered and integrated them in ways that their original creators never imagined possible. The result was a fleet that was invisible to traditional detection methods and more advanced than anything in known space. You have 3 minutes to power down your weapons and withdraw, Hayes continued. After that, we will demonstrate why underestimating humans was the galaxy's greatest mistake. Kulmesh's anger overrode his caution. You threaten the Vorthak Empire with your mongrel fleet? We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Our weapons can crack planets. And we know exactly how they work, Hayes replied. Dr. Ben Shaw, please explain to the Elder what we've learned about Vorthak world killer technology. Ben's elderly face appeared on another part of the screen. Hello, Elder Kulmesh. I've spent 50 years studying your weapon systems. Would you like to know their primary weakness? There are no weaknesses, Kulmesh roared. The quantum cascade initiators require precise harmonic frequencies to maintain stability, Ben said matter-of-factly. Disrupt those frequencies by exactly 0.03%, and the weapons overload catastrophically. We've been broadcasting the disruption frequency for the past 2 minutes. Kulmesh spun toward his weapons officer. Status report. Cascade initiators are showing instability, Elder. Power levels are fluctuating beyond safe parameters. Shut down the weapon. I'm trying, but the harmonic disruption is preventing safe shutdown. The weapon is building toward critical overload. Hayes's voice cut through the chaos. You have 90 seconds to evacuate your crew to the escape pods before your own weapon destroys your ship. Consider this a demonstration of what happens when you threaten human settlements. What followed was the most humiliating retreat in Vorthak history. The mighty Eternal Dominion, flagship of their ancient fleet, had to be abandoned as its own world-killer weapon tore itself apart from the inside. Elder Kulmesh himself barely escaped in an emergency pod, watching his greatest weapon destroy itself due to human interference. But the demonstration at Kepler 438c was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human. Fleets revealed themselves at every world targeted for destruction. The scattered network, built over a century of quiet preparation, activated with devastating effectiveness. On the former mining world that Kate Williams now governed, production, facilities that aliens thought were simple industrial complexes revealed their true purpose. Weapons, ships, and technologies that incorporated the best of every galactic civilization poured out in numbers that defied belief. How many ships do we have? Asked David Kim as he watched the production reports. More than anyone knows, Kate replied. We've been building them for 50 years, using asteroid facilities that don't appear on any galactic charts. Every failed mining operation, every abandoned colony site, every place the galaxy forgot about humans, we turned them into hidden shipyards. The revelation sent shockwaves through every major government. The species they had dismissed as failed refugees had been quietly building the largest fleet in galactic history, using resources and locations that others had written off as worthless. But the greatest shock was yet to come. Dr. Grace Kim stood before the Emergency Galactic Assembly, the first human to address the full council in over a century. The great hall was packed with representatives from every major species, all demanding answers about humanity's sudden revelation of power. You have deceived us for generations, accused Counselor Nexara, her blue skin flushed with anger. You pretended to be refugees while secretly building weapons. Grace's response was calm and measured. We built those weapons because we knew this day would come. We knew that eventually someone would try to use galaxy-killing weapons against innocent worlds. We prepared to stop that from happening. You had no right. Elder Kulmesh, now stripped of his military command, struggled to his feet. The Vorthak Empire maintains order through strength. Without proper authority, the galaxy descends into chaos. Your authority, Grace replied, was built on fear and the threat of planetary destruction. We're offering something different. She activated a holographic display that showed medical data from across the galaxy. The neural plague that has been killing thousands across multiple species. We have the cure, not just treatment, but complete immunity for all affected populations. The assembly fell silent. The plague had been spreading for months, defying every attempt at containment. Multiple species faced potential extinction if it couldn't be stopped. Human immune systems, Grace continued, developed resistance through our exposure to environments. From dozens of different worlds, we can synthesize a universal vaccine that will protect everyone. In exchange for what? Asked Aldorian Representative Timko suspiciously. Nothing, Grace said simply. We're giving it away freely to anyone who needs it. The silence stretched longer. This wasn't how galactic politics worked. Species didn't give away advantages without demanding something in return. Grace activated another display. But there's something else you need to know. Earth is coming back. The hologram showed recent images from the Sol system. Where Earth had once died in fire and poison, a new world was emerging. Blue oceans sparkled under a clean atmosphere. Green continents stretched beneath white clouds. It was more beautiful than Earth had ever been, transformed by the Genesis protocol into something that surpassed its original glory. The quantum reconstruction process is nearly complete, Grace explained. Within 20 years, Earth will be fully habitable again. But it won't be the same world that died a century ago. It will be better, more stable, more diverse, more capable of supporting life than any planet in known space. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. A reborn Earth, combined with humanity's revealed technological capabilities and strategic knowledge, would make them the dominant power in the galaxy almost overnight. "You're threatening us," Nexara said quietly. "No," Grace replied. "We're offering you a choice. The old way of doing things, empires built on fear, order, maintained through the threat of destruction, that led to what we just prevented. World-killer weapons pointed at innocent populations." She gestured to the assembled representatives. "We know all of your weaknesses. We understand your technologies better than you do. We can defeat any fleet, cure any plague, and terraform any world. We could conquer the galaxy if we wanted to." The hall was dead silent now. "But we don't want to conquer anything. We want to build something better. A galaxy where species work together instead of threatening each other. Where knowledge is shared instead of hoarded. Where no one has to fear planetary destruction because they disagree with the established order." Admiral Hayes's voice came over the communication system. "The choice is yours. Continue the old ways and face the consequences of threatening human settlements. Or work with us to build something that serves everyone." Elder Kulmesh struggled to speak. What happens to the Vorthak Empire?" "The same thing that happens to every empire that relies on fear instead of cooperation," Grace replied sadly. "It ends. But the Vorthak people don't have to end with it. You can be part of what comes next." Over the following months, the galaxy slowly came to terms with its new reality. The human scattered network became the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization, one based on cooperation rather than domination, knowledge sharing rather than secrecy, and mutual support rather than fear. The neural plague was eradicated within a year using human-developed vaccines. Struggling worlds received terraforming assistance using technologies that combined the best discoveries of multiple species. Trade routes that had been disrupted by war were restored and improved. And on Earth, now beautiful beyond anything in its previous history, humanity began building not just a homeworld, but a symbol of what was possible when a species refused to accept that failure was final. Ambassador Lisa Chen, great-granddaughter of the Elena who had sent humanity's last desperate message, stood in the restored United Nations building and looked out at the blue skies and green forests of the reborn Earth. "They finally understand," she said to her aide. "The galaxy finally understands why we survived Earth's fall." "Because we're stronger than they thought?" the aide asked. Lisa shook her head. "Because we learned something they never had to learn. We learned that the greatest strength doesn't come from never falling down. It comes from getting back up every time you do." The galaxy had learned its lesson, and humanity had taught it, that sometimes the greatest victories come not from never losing, but from refusing to stay defeated. Now they all understood why no species had ever done what humanity did, not because they couldn't, but because they had never needed to learn how.